We want to make sure that we are hearing directly from district residents who will need to use the system. And what I didn't mention is that the focus groups also included intake workers. And so we want to make sure that we're hearing from everybody about the system. There are some key partners that we have in this effort. I do want to say a huge thank you to Neighborhood Legal Services Program, who applied for a grant from the Legal Services Corporation to support the technology piece of this. And then, of course, the other folks that I mentioned who supported the program, the district, K. Fritz Foundation, Meyer Foundation, American Bar Endowment, and others. And then a whole bunch of people in terms of just hardcore labor. So Karen, I'm looking at you and I got a huge smile on my face, so thank you. And I should also mention that Chief Judge Josie Herring and Chief Judge Blackburn Rigsby, as well as most of you and you meeting our legal aid grantees, supported the application, the Legal Services Corporation application. In terms of where we're going to continue designing and building the system in 2022. We're going to pilot and use feedback to improve the system in 2023. So when we launch, it won't be in every subject matter area. We'll figure out what that area is or areas. But the goal would be to launch this in 2024. And so that's where we hope to go. We do want to keep you informed all along the way. So we'll have some information about that towards the end. And then let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say before turning it over to Mashonda. I think I got, oh, all right, the next slide, the most obvious thing. Actually, I'm confused. Is this my slide or Mashonda's slide? It's your slide.
It's my slide.
All right, good. So there's two people I want to introduce as we go forward. One is Joseph Schieffer, who you'll hear from after Mashonda. Joseph, as I said, is the brains and the spirit behind ATJ Tech, his company. And then next, I want to introduce Mashonda Miles, who is our network project manager. I'm speaking of network. There's a whole bunch of networked efforts that are going on, but we are spearheading the DC Legal Aid Transformations Network. And I want to turn it over to Mashonda.
Thank you so much, Kira. Welcome, everyone, and so excited to have all of you here. I know you're wondering, why does your participation matter? Well, Robin Jones-Gunn said, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so in order for this provider database to take off and do what it needs to do, we need everyone's participation, whether you're in the network or you're not in the network. Your information is for the DC residents so that they have the access to your services that they need to procure. So as long as you put your information in, we are good, whether you're in the network or out. And I just want to make sure that I stress that. Our system is stronger and better, serves our community when we are together. DC, we don't need multiple service providers, but we only need one. And so Joseph has orchestrated and constructed this amazing database that will do just that, provide one service directory for everyone. This provider database is the foundation for the coordinated intake and referral system. The quality of the information will correlate to the quality of referrals. So your input is critical, meaning keeping it updated and making sure that we have all of the information that we need. As you can see, the coordinated intake and referral system works better when our communities and every organization participates. So the more participation we have, the better and stronger this will be. So we thank you for coming today, and we hope that you will listen to what Joseph has to say and then input your information so that we can have a strong provider database. Thank you. Joseph, you can take it away.
Okay. All right. So some of you probably have had access and gone into the database. If you haven't, you may be getting access, or your executive director or leadership can ask for us to give you access. So here I'll go through about it and show some screenshots, and then I will give a demo of the actual database. All right, first thing. So as Mashonda mentioned, the database is the core, it's the foundation of a lot of the work we'll do for coordinated intake. So to be clear, just in case there were some concerns or questions, not everything that you put into it will necessarily be visible to all groups. So as it says here, some information will populate public-facing websites so the public can find providers. Some information will only be available to legal services providers. So we want to make a good portal, in a sense, for legal aid intake staff to see information about other providers and also see contact information. And then some information will only be accessed by system administrators, such as myself. So for example, we'll want to know what case management system you use so that we can work on automatically making referrals into your case management system at some point down the line. And so we need to know what that is so we can set up those integrations. And again, that will all be done in collaboration with you. And we won't show your case management system to other people. It's just so that we know it so that we can take the appropriate steps on the technology side. Also, having this one database enables us to get the information we need from you efficiently. So in other words, we don't want to do lots of surveys over and over and say, oh, now we need this piece of information. So over time, we will add fields and different functionality to the database, but you'll just keep coming back to the same place and you'll be able to input and update information in the context of all your information. So there essentially won't be like, or we'll try to limit it, one-off information requests. We'll try to keep everything in one central database and utilize that as we need to. Next slide. Okay, I went through some of this earlier on this first slide, but just to make it clear here, how it will be used, there'll be a public-facing directory. On the left-hand side is a picture of a directory that we've started to put together. And you can see there, I just clicked on public benefits, and then you could see some of the providers for those services. Next one is a portal for intake staff. So the public needs to see some information about intake, but the amount of information, like for example, about intake is so much more sophisticated and complex than what we would want to show the public. So you may want to share with other intake staff some of the particulars around your services. That would be too much information for the public. And so we'll have a portal that intake staff can see that. Next one is system information, such as the case management system you use, so that we can route you cases appropriately. And then the next one I have here is data evaluation. So we'll evaluate the CIR program, and we'll use information that's in this database to see the effectiveness of the program and to make future enhancements. All right, one thing that we want to make sure to get clear on today is the terms, okay? Organizations, that one's self-explanatory, all right? So it's essentially legal entities in a sense, all right? So right now, to be clear about this, we're focused on the core legal services providers. Currently, we don't have what we would consider to be the different networks in there yet, such as the landlord-tenant legal aid network. Okay, we will be adding those in, but we don't have those yet. So right now, we're just focused on the organizations. Next, I guess one other comment about what we're currently working on is we're not currently working on the law school clinics. That will also be coming, but that's going to be another effort, and we're going to have dedicated time and focus in that area so we can really think through the best way to integrate the law school clinics into someone's options. So for example, if someone is looking for a specific service and there are 10 potential providers, and one of those is, or 2 or 3 maybe, is a law school clinic, how do we make it clear, when the legal law school clinic would be a good choice versus maybe something that has to be more immediate? So we want to really think through that so it's a good user experience, and we don't want to just put all these services together and just just put it all out there and then people have to filter and work their way through 10 different options. We want to really think through that experience so it's more filtered for what they need. Okay, next one, listings. And this one, I wish I had like exclamation points. So listings is a key concept here. It's a specific combination of services, legal topics, and eligibility criteria. And so you may have one listing if all your services have the same eligibility criteria and you provide the same level of service, such as brief advice, full representation. If you provide the same for all your services, then you may just need one listing. But if those things vary, then I encourage you to have multiple listings so it's easy to find. So let's take a real quick example. Let's say Neighborhood Legal Services, they get some new funding around a specific legal issue, and they do this clinic once every Saturday, and it's this new legal topic. Well, if they just had one listing and they added at the bottom this huge list of services, oh, and we do this one legal topic on this like Saturday once a week, that's going to be very difficult for people to find. So what we would want to do in that case is, okay, let's make a new listing, and it's going to be, let's say, brief advice, and it's going to be for the specific legal topic, and it's going to have the specific eligibility criteria. And so when someone, a navigator, the public, legal aid, intake staff, et cetera, when someone searches for, let's say, brief advice for that specific topic, they're going to get that specific option, and they won't have to read through a long list of all the different service options an organization provides. So it's kind of like if you do a Google search for something, you may get multiple pages in your Google search that go to the same website, okay? So it just makes it so that you can get right to what you're looking for, and you don't have to just, let's say that in a Google search, you could only show one page of a website, so you have 10 different websites. Well, there may be something that actually like the first 2 or 3 results should be that website, because there's different areas on that page that would be what you're looking for. So just to go through these bullets here, provides a method for organizations that have multiple service combinations that can be easily searched and used by the public. Okay, all right, so I think I covered those last 2 points. And here we see Catholic Charities at the bottom in a screenshot. So they've got free or low-cost legal services for individuals appearing before the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services and Immigration Court. And so then they have free legal information and attorney referrals for those other legal topics. So we want to have 2 different things. So if someone has an immigration issue, it's very easy to see what they provide for that issue. All right, next one, locations. So a subset of your organization are the locations you have. So these are the physical addresses of legal services organizations. And so when hopefully COVID goes away, I expect more people will maybe do like walk-in intakes. And so it's important for people to know where in the community they can go to get legal help. And so a map of the organizations and what they offer is going to become more important. I understand in COVID-19, physical addresses has become much less of a thing, but we still want to acknowledge that hopefully this pandemic will come to like, you know, something manageable, and people will be looking for addresses to go get help. And then finally is people. So this is staff of legal service organizations that are involved in intake. Mostly that's leadership and intake management staff right now. The idea behind this is that if you have a question about organization services, you can quickly see who to contact. And so it starts to build that community and collaboration among the service providers. Okay, all right. So what we did initially is we put together a list of the executive directors or similar role, if that's not the same title you have as a leader. And we gave them access to the database and sent them an email and told them how to get access. If we, then in some cases, we maybe couldn't find who that executive director or leader was. So if you haven't received that, email innovation@dcbarfoundation.org and we will get you access. And then also, if you would like another person at your organization to have edit access, email that email and we will get them edit access. Right now, the people who have access are just those people who are able to edit it. At some point, it will also be available as view only or read only to legal aid intake staff and other legal aid people and providers. But right now, we just have set it up for those people who have edit access. Okay, let's do a demo. One moment here. Okay. All right, people see my coordinate intake screen? Yeah, okay. This is so cool. All right, so here, when you log in, and let me make sure I need to be somebody. All right, I'm gonna be, who do we have on the call that I can be? I'm gonna be Karen. Is Karen Nicole on?
Karen's here, and I see
Ah.
Claire.
I'm be Karen today. Perfect. This will be fun. So I'm going to act like I'm going to preview this as if I'm someone going in. Okay, so you can go to all organizations and you can see all the different organizations that provide services. And then you can also search for a particular provider, search for a legal topic, etc. And you can find those providers. You can also change how many items you see per page if you want to see a lot more. So let's say Karen is curious about trying to get help for somebody, and she thinks maybe this DC Volunteer Lawyers Project could help them out, so she can click on that. All right, see about their services, see the phone number. Now, once this organization updates their profile, we'll know that the phone intake hours, the service types, whether that's brief advice, full representation, legal clinic, etc., geographic service area. She can go to their website with a click and then see any eligibility guidelines and then see their listings. So that gets back to that listings concept. She can open that up, look at the locations and see the people at the organization. So we can click on the people and say, okay, if I have a question for this person, I can email them and ask that question. So that is organizations. And then my organization. This is where she can update her information. So she'll click edit and can edit this. Now, in some cases, I imagine it won't be used a lot, but in some cases, maybe you want to bold something, like it's something that people often miss. So you can use this editor here or a bullet point if that makes it easier to read. I really encourage people to focus on plain language, readability, like in some ways, the shorter, the better to make that really easy to use. All right, update the phone intake number, intake hours, website, the service types, so you can choose as many as you need to. Geographic service area, and I'll update this one just as to show you what it's like to update. And what we're going to do after people update their listings, we're going to try to make things more consistent. So you may see like if something just says DC, we may go in there and say like, okay, for everyone who says just DC, we're going to make it this like standard term just so it reads a little nicer. The short name or acronym, the eligibility. So we've got financial and then organization. And then here, this information for the CIR program. And we mentioned here that this information is only viewable by the people in your organization who have the ed access, and then the system administrators. So we're in putting together all these organizations, like, we should figure out what organization or when they were founded, and then also to try to anticipate calls, how many calls they get per month, how many calls not for a legal issue. So you will see more here for like evaluation and research purposes. Then we have the listings, and then we have the locations and the people. So the organizations page is like the most robust in terms of you can see all the underlying things for that organization. So you see, like I said, the people, the locations, the listings, and then all about their organization. All right, next I'll go to listings. Okay, and here I can filter for particular legal topics. So let's say I'm curious about finding someone that can do something related to education. All right, so as we imagine, Advocates for Justice and Education comes up, Children's Law Center comes up, ADC comes up, and then I can go in and see information about this particular service. So this is for education and talks about what they do, special education, school, discipline, exclusion, etc., eligibility, and that way I can see if this might be a fit. And one thing I meant to say this up front, but what we're talking about today and this effort is just about the directory and the database. This is not about transferring cases to you. It's not about necessarily like something that's going to be routing cases between organizations. This is just for us to understand who provides what services. So then we can start to figure out how, like, let's say someone calls coordinate intake with a particular issue, we can say, okay, here's how we would handle that. And then we'll be working with organizations, let's say there are multiple that provide education services, to think through, okay, for these more subtopics or more granular detail, here's how we would route those cases. So right now, again, this is just about gathering all this information so we can plan on how we would do coordinated intake. Okay, next, you can go to My Listings and click on your listing, and you can edit it. Or let's say, for example, that it's maybe, and we grabbed a lot of this information from lawhelp.org/DC. So let's say that this is just so not up to date. You could delete it. Okay, so let's say you have multiple listings and you no longer provide something for that service. You can delete it, and it will give you like a confirmation that you want to delete it or not. So it's not here. We'll cancel. So you can just see it's not that touchy. You do get a confirmation. So we can go here and edit the listings. Let's take, for example, that, and I think I may have read this, right? Like, yeah, I meant to do this. Connects clients with pro bono attorneys to draft wills and advance directives. So what we could do, and this, I'm not sure how up to date this is, but this is maybe one way to think about it. What you may do if you're NLSP in this case is, okay, out of my core services, I'm going to take out wills and estates. Okay, then, and I won't do it now, but this is imagining. Then I'm gonna go back to My Listings and click Add New. All right, and this gives you the process for creating a new listing. And so I'm gonna add in, so I'm gonna go MEA and legal topics. I'm gonna go will, there we go. So I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna create this separate listing for wills and estates. And for that, we do attorney referral. So they're like, and I could make it, okay, it has to be maybe this income level, or you have to be a senior, something like that. But that may be a good situation if you don't provide full rep, brief advice, that's more of a pro bono referral thing. That could be a good one, so that when someone, a navigator, legal aid intake staff is trying to find help for someone with a wills and estates issue, they could see that NLSP for this one makes attorney referrals. So maybe if someone else provides full rep and the consumer meets their particular criteria, maybe that would be a better fit depending on the situation. So that's an example of when a second listing may make sense so that it can be more filtered and sorted accordingly. Just to go through this process quickly while I'm at it. So to create a new listing, you'll fill in this information and then we will review it. So I'll go through and make sure everything is consistent and it all makes sense. And then I will publish it and you'll get an email that says, okay, now this has been published. And that way when people go into all listings, they'll see it, and then you'll see it under My Listings and can edit it. One thing to know is a lot of the information that we have comes from the organization level. So when you make a new listing, you don't have to fill out lots of information because we're already grabbing most of it just from your organization. So it's just the specific things about that listing. So if it has particular financial eligibility restrictions, personal requirements, circumstances, you just have to fill those out, and then automatically we bring in other elements such as like your logo, or it could be your locations will link to it, right? So like it's when you create a listing, you're just putting in the things you need, and it inherits the certain aspects from the organizational level. Okay, let's now go to, and we can just discard that. I didn't actually create a new one, but if you need to, there you go. And I think I've got to balance this carefully. On one hand, I'm encouraging like new listings so that you can really be specific about your services, and so someone can like know like, okay, this is a really good fit. And I also wouldn't have like 20 probably. That might be too much, right? So I think you want to, somewhere between like 1 and 3 if you have like variation. If you are I think AJE is a good example. You maybe only need 1. So you provide services for education. You have, the same eligibility requirements. So you don't necessarily need multiple listings. If you're a large organization like Legal Aid Society or NLSP, and you provide a broad variety of legal topics, service levels, etc., then that may make sense to have separate listings. All right, let's go to locations. And again, this will be more important kind of post-pandemic, or maybe we're getting closer to that. So you can see where those locations are, and then we'll also have a map at some point. Also, we show the walk-in intake hours. So let's go to, for example, let's go to Utah, downtown DC. All right, so we've got the address. And one thing, whenever you see these little hoverovers, you can that's just copies it to your clipboard, so you can easily paste it. So if you were in a chat with someone or an email, you can just click that button, it'll copy it, then you can paste it into some other thing you're doing. So we've got the phone number and then organization page. So a lot of these things you can see are linked. So if you clicked on this, then you would go to the organization page for a UTA. Okay, and then if I was, and let's go to NLSP, or sorry, let's go to, yeah, we'll go to my locations. That way I can show you how to edit and add. Okay, so right now we've got 2 locations for NLSP. We can, if let's say one closes down, you can delete it, and then we can edit this. All right, so you can edit the address, intake hours, phone number, details, and then we bring this in automatically. So this is an editable thing. We're just bringing this in your organization page. So sometimes you will be on a page in which some things are editable and some are not. That means we're inheriting aspects from your organization about that listing or location. Okay, location details is just for things like, let's say it's only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or some other nuance like that you want people to know. And then we can add a location. So we can add new, very similar to, it's pretty much exact same as the listing process. If you have a new location, select your organization, and then you'll provide location information, and then we'll inherit a lot of the information that would be needed from the organization level. So you'll just add things that are specific to that location. Okay, and finally, we'll go to people. Now, one thing I want to mention as I get into people here, I'm going to work on functionality so that you can add people who can have access to edit your listings and organization, et cetera. So right now, for security purposes, we have people email the innovation@dcbarfoundation.org. Over time, we're going to build in ways that can be handled within the system. One thing to be clear that we're looking for when we get those emails is that the email needs to be from the email domain of that organization. So for example, if it's some like john@gmail.com, we're not gonna take action on that, because that means anyone could just email that and request things, right? So the email has to be from the domain of the organization, and they can only give access to people to an email address with the domain of that organization. So for example, for Karen, that email needs to come from Karen, which is showing that @nlsp.org email address, and she needs to give access to someone with an nlsp.org email address. So just for security purposes, we're only giving access to people with the proper email domains, and not just something outside of that for security reasons. Over time, we'll build more of that into the system. Okay, next here, we're on all people. So we can search for an organization. If we know who we want to contact, it's listed alphabetically by name. So let's say we want to contact Carol. We can see her information. And then also you can go to your profile and edit that. And one thing I wanted to mention here, and this kind of goes with locations and some other elements probably, but there may be cases that you don't want to show your email or phone number. I'm not sure. I mean, we're trying to encourage collaboration and community, but there could be exceptions. There always are. So let's say, for example, you didn't want your location to be published. If let's say you're a DV shelter, or you have some reason that you don't want something to be shown, you can just, you could remove that. And as we find some of those more edge cases, we'll try to figure out ways to accommodate that. But for right now, it's simple. We wanted a way for people to collaborate and in particular, over time, intake staff. So people could see like, oh, I need to look up who does intake at this organization, ask them a question about their services. Now I know with core intake, some of that may go to a navigator, but we're just trying to create this community at this point, so it's easy to see who is doing what and contacts and be able to collaborate. Okay, I think that is that for the demo. And actually, I've got a few more slides to go. And if I'm seeming very excited, I am. I'm pretty pumped about all this stuff. All right, so what we want you to do is log in the database and review your organization's information. And again, what we did is we tried to pull information from lawhelp.org/DC, from your websites, from other listings we found. Like we pulled information from all over, and thanks to DCBF and their interns this summer, they did a lot of that information finding. But nonetheless, it still needs a lot of work, a lot of things to update. So go in, update, review information. Right now, you can't create an organization. Okay, so if someone is not in the database that provides services that we don't know about, email innovation@dcbarfoundation.org, and we can look at that and add that organization. And then you can edit and add listings, edit and add locations. And then right now for people, again, it's that email, but over time, we're going to figure out some ways that are super secure that you could add people to give access to them to edit your information. Okay, next one, deadlines and office hours. So for this first round of edits, and again, this is a living thing, so you're always going to be making updates over time, okay? But for these first round of edits, to get a good system that we can all look at and be like, okay, this looks really good and it's easy to find a provider, we want that to be done by October 7th. And then we will have 3 different office hour sessions. So if you have questions or anything, you can come to one of those and we can walk through the database or answer questions right there at that time. We do want you to register using Zoom registration so that we keep it secure. And when you get these slides, I think these are linked to the Zoom registration pages. So you can go from there, and we'll also send out the links. And then if you have questions, you can email the innovation email. Okay, I think we're ready for some Q&A.
So
I have questions and I'll read them all for you. The first question, you kind of tackled this one, but I don't know if you want to touch on it again. How do we access the database?
Yeah, so you should have received an email, but if you didn't, then email innovation@dcbarfoundation.org and you can request access.
This is great. On the organizational pages, I see a field for intake phone number. Some organizations have online intake, either in addition to or in lieu of phone intake. Will there be a field for link to online intake?
Yes. So I guess that's a good question. Good question. So right now we have the link to the website, and then assuming that someone would go then and apply online from there. But I think if someone wants to go directly to that online application, they could do that. So we'll add that field in, and you can put the URL of your online application in there, and that will be at the organization level. So we'll inherit that down into the listings.
Okay. The next question. Are there more options for legal topics that will be available?
Yes, if there's a legal topic that is not covered, again, I would say email innovation and say here are the ones that we would like to be added. We've tried to make it manageable. As you can imagine, there could be probably hundreds if we really got into like the really detailed stuff. So that will give us the input, and then we can consider those other topics and whether we, like, for example, there's consumer issues, which there's a whole, hundreds of consumer issues. So I think we'll have to be thoughtful in how we go about that. But if 5 organizations email us and say, hey, we all not that they would do it together, but just if we have 5 separate emails saying we really need this topic, it really needs to be stand out, then like that would be, strong voting towards having that one not just be under a bigger category, but stand out on its own.
Another question that came up was to that point, and she mentioned housing because it can mean 1,000 different things to different organizations.
Great example. So yeah, we need to think through that, and I think another aspect is whether the subtopics per se get shown to the public, or if it's just for intake staff. So imagine a list for the public. I don't think we want like 50. But if you were legal aid intake staff, maybe you can deal with that level of complexity. So we have to think through like, okay, yeah, we agree, but like we can't have like 50 different ones. And I can just to give you a feel of some of the challenges with this, I can give you an example of that public website that we're working on. So loading. Okay, so right now, I guess, so we probably have like 10 or 12 here. So right now we're at about 30. And so we wanted to build something that's really easy for people to find who could help with their issues. So let's choose guardianship. Okay, so right now we're at 6 different providers, and we can see this, we can see what topics they provide for. So it's a decent experience here. DC Kin Care Alliance, phone, services, legal topics, description, eligibility, etc. Right? So for new topics, essentially what it would, if it was made public, it's gonna make this bigger, which I understand it may need to be. We just have to be thoughtful about what is like for intake staff and what is for the public. So, and maybe we'll have to split this. Yes, find another way to split this up. So, but yeah, there's a lot of I get it. There's like this big list, and then for me, like user experience, I'm like, how do I keep this simple? So it's always a balance for that.
Next question, if our logo needs to be updated, can we edit that?
Sorry, I missed that one, Keisha. One more time.
If our logo needs to be updated, can we?
Oh yeah,
edit that?
yeah. I'll add a field for that. And what we did, so we wanted to have somewhat of a consistent look and feel, and have some like colors so you can easily distinguish between the organizations. So what we did is put those gradients that was complementary to your logo. So what you can update your logo, and then we'll update it with like some type of gradient behind it, so it looks nice on the website.
One quick concern about DC metro area being entered as the area served for many organizations who say DC. Many clients, applicants interpret that to mean the DMV area. For organizations like Legal Aid, who only handle DC legal matters only, can this designation simply say DC? Those who serve folks with issues in DC, Maryland, and Virginia would fit under the DC metro area umbrella.
Kira, Nancy?
So I think what I'm hearing is that DC metro area is not specific enough, and that we should look at how we designate where services are offered. So we shouldn't say DC metro area, we should say DC, Maryland, Virginia, Ward 9, and be very specific. So
Okay,
that's my takeaway from that.
cool. We'll work on that, and I could use some help to make sure I understand. And what we could do is make it like where it's a list. So right now it's just open text, but we could make a list, like something you could pick from. So if I can get help from the group on like what those selection options would be.
Yeah,
So
we should do that, because it'll be too broad. So it's better to
Okay.
have it more specific.
And then if it's open text, everyone will put it in different terms, even though it might mean sometimes the same thing.
All right, and then I'm seeing some feedback in the chat that we would want to do in Maryland,
be.
and since Carolyn is saying, can we have it be county
Mhm.
specific? So maybe Carolyn, if you email us, and I think we've got a Slack channel that's designated for coordinated intake and referral, which this is all related to, but that this sort of feedback is exactly what we're looking for, which is super helpful. So thank you.
Okay. Would one listing per legal practice area make sense for most organizations?
Depends on how many legal topics you serve. Yeah, I think if there's variances between eligibility and the level of service, then it may make sense, but I'd just be careful with it, because let's say if there are 62 organizations and they have a listing for every legal topic, that's going to be, when someone tries to search for something, it's going to be a huge list to have to comb through. So we're balancing usability with accuracy in a sense, because we could make something that's super accurate, like it's the most detail accurate thing ever, and people would get overwhelmed and wouldn't use it. So.
Okay. For the location, does it matter whether we are doing on-site intakes, etc.? For example, if we are not currently doing that, should we not include a location, or is it more for general knowledge?
The way I'm thinking about it at the moment, I would put it in and just say, we do have a few examples in there, and say that we're not taking walk-in appointments, that you need to call to make an appointment. And that same location will have the phone number on it. So that's probably how I'd handle it. And that gives you the flexibility to, if you ever wanted to change that, you could. So.
Having separate flags for, oh, I think we kind of covered that, so I'll skip to the next one. Can I suggest that we think about an exclusions category? ACLUDC does a good job of listing what they don't do, which is really helpful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's, I'd have to, just like open text, probably exclusions. Let me think about that one. I agree. It's really helpful. I gotta think about, I gotta think about how it would be in a listing for the public, assuming it's for the public, how we could make that usable. And I'll tell you from our research and doing a lot of these things, the volume of text is so important. When we do these tests, if they see just a huge thing of text, they just look for a button somewhere or a phone number. They just ignore it. So we have to be careful, because essentially if we add too much text, now all that text becomes irrelevant to them, to the user. So I think that's something that we'll consider, and how to make that usable.
Is it possible to have broad legal topics and then subtopics on a second landing page?
Yeah, we can do that. So all these are good. We'll make sure we get the chat from all these questions. So let me see. And these are things that we'll consider to make it more useful.
We have a couple more questions. I will say that based on experience, you need to be specific with the public, or there can be miscommunication. People will call and say, do you do housing matters, but get upset if you don't do their specific housing matters.
Yep. Yeah, so and another balancing point is trying to have things on fewer pages. So for example, the one I showed you, it's all on one page, versus, okay, now there's somehow multiple pages that you have to click through to drill in to the specific thing. So some of these we could have multiple pieces of functionality, where some, if you want to really drill in, then you have to go through these separate pages or something where there's logic in it. And then some things where it's just a directory where you can just pick your topic and then you see the listings. So I think there may be multiple ways to do the same thing.
catching up here. Is the goal to actually create a joint intake form or have a navigator conduct an intake? Or is this a directory of providers?
The latter, I would say, for right now. So right now we want to gather all this information, and then we're going to build tools to use it. So some will be a public directory, some will be that portal for intake staff, some will be for the coordinated intake navigators, and then we'll be developing the coordinated intake phone number and the online intake, so someone can just come in to coordinate intake and the case gets routed to the appropriate organization. So it's all the above, but for right now, it's more gathering information.
Can you add multiple numbers for intake such as TTY or RTT?
Yes. Thank you. And Natasha, if you could, maybe if you could send me an email, I'll put my email in the chat here. I want to talk about that and the best way to do it. So we have a lot of other tools. We have the TTY. So, and in DC, is that just one number? Or would you have, yeah, we'll have to talk about it. But yeah, I want the details. And then I'll figure out the right fields to create for like the TTY and multiple numbers. So.
Could it be county specific? We operate in 5 counties in Maryland.
Yep, that's where I'm thinking we're going to go. Once we get more information on those geographic service areas, we'll create essentially like specific things you can choose from. So right now it's open text, but I see us moving towards something that you have particular selections. And then maybe if they choose like other, there's some exception, there could be some open text option, but we would evaluate all the responses first to see what those selections could be.
Great, and this is our last question. When do you aspire to have the public-facing website ready for release?
Say in the next 30 to 60 days. So, and again, that will just be a directory of all these providers, really easy to navigate. You can see, as I showed you, see their information. You can choose brief advice, full representation, all these easy ways to just find what you're looking for. And we'll share that out and people can start to essentially use some of the functionality we're building to be more efficient currently with intake. And then that information will then go into other efforts.
Okay, and I just got one more question in. Can you show how to add people to an organization in the portal?
Certainly. Oh, you said add people?
Yes.
Oh, we don't have that functionality yet, sorry. So you need to email innovation@dcbarfoundation.org. And again, it needs to come from the leader of the organization and it has to have their email domain and they should be giving access to someone also that has the same email domain. So, and in time, you'll be able to go into the portal and add it yourself. But for right now, we're doing it through that innovation email.
All right, so that brings us to or close to our 60 minutes. I want to say thank you to everyone for showing up today. We're just, I mean, Joseph is very plain spoken about his excitement. I think we're all pretty excited and a lot of work has gone into this and the feedback is really, really, really helpful. We being the DC Bar Foundation and our partners will continue to work on this and develop it and continue to get and seek your input on how to improve it and how to make it better. We've got a little bit of a journey ahead of us, but really excited about sort of, this is a milestone moment. So I sort of want to like jump up and down in my seat, but this is pretty huge because we really do want to have one comprehensive list of all the providers in the district and where they are and what they do and how you get in touch with them and really get out of the space where everyone is keeping their own list, which is part of what we heard in some of the focus groups and conversations that we've been having, but have one list that we as a community keep up to date and that we can use and rely on. So I would say there was a slide that was up on the screen. If you could put that one back up and maybe we can put those links in the chat as well. There are 3 opportunities with office hours where you can come and ask more questions about the database and how to edit your information. There's also, you can join the DC Legal Aid Transformations Network on Slack, and we'll put that link in the chat as well. And then if you've got specific questions or want to know more specifically about updates related to coordinated intake and referral, you can join the Slack channel related to that. So we're trying to have one-stop shops in terms of communication so that everybody gets everything. So with that, 2:58, you guys get 2 minutes back. Thank you to all of you for being here and for your help and for showing up and making this work. So thank you. And
And I'll-
Keisha,